After months of anticipation and build-up, Spiel 18 is almost here. In fact, in less than 12 hours, I will be on a plane to Germany in order to cover the event as part of the Board Game Geek team, where we will be live streaming interviews with designers and publishers for 5 days. Normally, I take a lot of time to prepare for a video, mostly by playing a game several times in order to get a thorough understanding of it. And then I do many takes. So many takes. I try to make everything look very fluid, and I do that by not scripting anything, and instead just talking extemporaneously, and then doing multiple takes as I iterate what I want to say until I finally get something, and then chop it all up. So a recent video, for example, I recorded 76 minutes, and then the final video is 10. I don't have time for that today. So for my final Spiel 2018 preview, I'm going to run through as many games as I can, just with a very short take on all of them. Now, this starts, why not, with the first game I covered for Spiel 18, Narabi, coming from Daniel Fair, published by Lifestyle. It's a fine deduction game. It's really, there's something special about this. It's very tiny and variable in terms of how it works, where you may solve the puzzle, the cooperative puzzle, in 1 or 2 turns, or you may fail completely after 20 minutes. Or maybe you succeed in 20 minutes with a final move that you can make out of 25 moves. No, that's what I started off with, doing full videos. What else did I do videos on? My most recent one, we'll bookend it here, 5 Colors, fancy press your luck, sort of stock game by John Bannister and Galeriucci, coming from Japon brand. Also from Japon brand, I covered Fruit Friends and Shibuya, a 2-player movement game where you try to get your players across the street. That's all you have to do. Try to block people if you can. You can only walk on black or white, or squares or diamonds, squares or circles. All the details elude me now. Fruit Friends, you're trying to collect fruit to score points based on the sets that you collect. But every fruit has its own scoring potential, and you're going to pick fruits by laying down pairs, and then people are going to take stuff and you get what's left. So try not to stick yourself with terrible things. Continuing with games I've already done full videos on. So you can go look at my geek list, Fun and Board Games with WEM, if you want to click through and see any of them. Impact, a new version of Strike, where mostly you're rolling and trying not to lose your dice. It's very simple, straightforward, not much to it. Game of Suspicion and Terra Shifter, 2 games by Taiwanese publisher Sharppoint Publishing. Game of Suspicion is a deduction game where you're trying to guess the numbers that people have in their hands. All the cards have special powers, so you can use a card for a power, but of course that reduces the number of cards in your hand, which means you will probably have an easier hand to guess, because there's fewer things for someone to guess. And you score points as you knock people out based on the number of cards in their hand. So maybe you want to play stuff if you think you're going to lose, so at least the other player gets fewer points. So, very tricky. It's interesting. Terra Shifter is a cooperative tile-moving game where you are trying to create patterns based on cards that come up, but to score a pattern that comes up, you have to score for a card that you have in your hand first. So you got to meet that threshold, and then you can actually go to the goal. Oh. What else? Papering Duel from Mandoo Games and Dazzle. It's a 2-player game of trying to wallpaper a room to try to show that your patterns deserve to be seen over the other players. And it's interesting with transparent cards where you're overlaying things to make patterns, and you have to hide the opponent's patterns on your turn, or else you lose. You have to make at least 1 pattern, or you lose. And you only get replacement cards equal to the number of patterns you make. So if you take 3 cards to make 1 pattern, you're only going to have 1 card left, which means you are in a downhill slope to failure. Blossoms, coming from Rebel. Quick playing, 2-player game where you're trying to collect sets of cards that are represented by 6 types of flowers, and extremely fast. Faster than I would think. It always ends and we end up having special powers left. We didn't use the tokens in order to do that. You can press your luck as much as you want to try to get those flowers growing high, but of course, maybe you'll end up with nothing. Atlandice from Ludonaute, Scott Huntington and Sean Graham. It's a 2 to 4 player game with dice drafting where You are trying to collect sets of objects, and when a room empties out of all the objects in it, then that particular object that's native to that room scores. And slowly the town of Atlantis sinks away, and you have nothing left. Cryptid, a deduction game for 3 to 5 players. Yes, 3 to 5? I'm going off memory off all this. Usually it's correct. Check the details. Cryptid, a deduction game in which you are trying to locate a creature which is exactly one spot, one hex on the grid, and each player knows a little bit about that creature's location. And you're asking other people questions. You try to deduce where the cryptid will be. Find it first in order to win. Spring Meadow, I guess officially a Spiel release. It debuted at Gen Con from Stronghold, coming from edition Spielwiese for Spiel. And this is the third game in Uwe Rosenberg's tiling trilogy, where it's sort of Tetris-y, where you can think of it as pieces falling because you're trying to make complete rows, and you're only going to score for as many complete rows as you make. Although you can have little marmot holes in there, and those will be okay as well. So you get little bonuses for doing that. What else? Party Game Just One from Repos Production, where cooperatively you are trying to have one player on your team guess a word. Each other player writes down a single word clue. And if any of you happen to repeat a clue word, then those clue words aren't shown to the guesser. So you're trying to be unique and out there. But of course, the more out there you are, the less useful your clues usually are. So you got to find this interesting balance. And if you can complete 13 rounds without missing a word, you win. It hasn't happened yet. We got a pair of roll and write games from Horrible Games, Railroad Ink, Red and Blue. Very solitary-ish because whatever you draw does not affect what other people are drawing, but you are drawing railroad lines and highways, and you're trying to connect exits around the board. You're trying to make long highways, long railroads. You're trying to fill up the center of the board. There's 2 different expansions in each box, which provide different ways to play. So one, you're going to add lakes, you'll add rivers, you'll add lava, you'll add meteors, and they just twist things up. And you finish your board, and you're like, oh, it looks very cool. Look at what I did. Wonder if I can do better next time. Brikks, roll and write from Wolfgang Warsch and Schmidt. So next game in the Ganz schön clever line, where it's just the Klein and Fine series. Looks very Tetris-y, doesn't it? I just mentioned Tetris before with Spring Meadow. This is much, much, much more like Tetris in that the pieces falling are quadrominos. And you try to fill up rows, and the more you can fill them up, the more points you score, and you try to cover the spaces in the grid with the bricks of the same color to get energy, and the energy allows you to rotate bricks or put in a brick of your choice so that you get more points. Discovery, the Era of Voyage from Emperor S4. This was originally published in Japan, now in a new edition from Emperor S4. And you lay out an island of cards. You're going to sail around the island to collect fruits or other types of resources or money, and you're going to trade, and you try to take ownership of certain parts of the island, which then lets you get more stuff from them, and you build this engine, and you try to get the most points by having majority ownership on particular locations or selling stuff for points. Orbis from Space Cowboys. I previewed this shortly after Gen Con, out now at Spiel. You are building up a universe. You are drafting 14 tiles, which will be laid into a pyramid, 5 on the bottom, 4, 3, 2. Your god on top that you draft as well. But the system of you drafting, well, you need to have worshippers that you can pay to take tiles. Okay? You got to populate those lands when you put them down. So try to do that well. Reef, which actually debuted at the Origins Game Fair and then was teased at Gen Con and then actually came out at the end of September and now will be widely released at Spiel. So it's a game by Emerson Matsuuchi in which you are building up coral pieces based on cards that you draft. And the cards give you your 2 pieces of coral and a scoring condition on the bottom with different colors than whatever you're drafting. So you got to build something up and then score the other thing. And then hopefully whatever you built here, you're going to score with your next card while you're building on to something else. And you try to chain everything together as you're drafting all these cards. Magic Fold by Bruno Cathala and Johan Go. This is the next game in the Fold It series, where you're each racing to fold a piece of cloth in order to make certain patterns, and you'll take a card that has movement along with a place token that also has movement or forces people back or gives you a genie so that you can cover a space without actually having to get the right thing. Now, try to race to the end of the path on your magic carpet. Majolica, just previewed this recently from Blue Magpie Games. 2 to 4 players. You are working in a tile factory and you're running some workshops. You're going to be drafting tiles to complete and fill workshops with proper patterns, 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 2 or all of one kind, so that you can then shove tiles out into orders in order to complete orders and get points. It's very simple drafting off a 4x4 grid where you can only take stuff from the outside of the grid initially, but it's the managing the workshops that's really the tricky, interesting part of the game, because as you fill a workshop, some things get shipped off and the rest gets shifted over to the next workshop. So you try to chain everything together so that everything just works just right. We have Fertility, which is a domino-style tile placement game where you get resources for putting tiles on the board. It's a shared board with other people, so you're trying not to set them up as you're doing things. And you'll take those resources to draft districts, which cost 0 to 2 resources, and then put all those resources in shops to score points from them. So there you go. That is what I have done complete videos on, and I'm just getting started. I have not shown other things that I did videos. I did Lost Cities Rivals, which debuted at Gen Con 2018, but really is out at Spiel, at least in the European market. I can't find my copy. It's somewhere. Maybe I lent it to someone. I don't know. Okay. That's a Reiner Knizia game, which takes the Lost Cities gameplay, but now you're you're auctioning cards, and so you only get to add to your expedition if you win an auction. So you got to manage your money, because you only had a certain amount of money, and you get refills of money 3 times during the game, and then you can get more cards. So try to see what other people value and then go from there. So that's what I've done complete videos on. I think there's a couple of other things that I didn't pull off the shelf or what have you. Trying not to take too long to go through everything. And yet that is maybe 1/3 of what I'm talking about here. Because after that, we've got the things that I've played but have not done videos on. Now, I try to play things more than once. I try to play them at least twice and usually 3 or more times in order to get a sufficient feel for what a game is like. I say this all the time. The first time you play a game, you are playing from ignorance. You don't know what you're doing right or wrong. You just stumble into things. Yes, I've played hundreds and hundreds of games previously, but that helps me strategize, but it doesn't give me an insight to really what this particular game is like. So I approach a game new and see how things go. And then the next time you play that game, you have experience of it. You build on it. You react to what you did before, and you make usually better choices to put things together well. Or at least you have some idea what the course of the game is like, what's going to pay off in time. There's all sorts of things that matter. This is why you should play games more than once before you write about them or do videos on them. But if you do written or video reviews, say how many times you play the game. Let people know that, because it is important for them to have that qualification in mind. They have to judge you. You have to judge me based on what you think of my experience with a game. How well you trust my experience with that. And I want to let you know how many times I've played something, because it matters, right? If I talk about, let's start talking about it, Piepmatz, all right, a card game from Riddleback, published by Lookout Spiel. You are trying to collect sets of birds in pairs. And if you get matching pairs, that's great. You're also collecting seeds from the feeder. That's great as well. And so you're trying to collect all this stuff, but you only score for the matching pairs that you have and if you have majorities in colors. So that's a cool system, and it's got this way to collect all the cards. You got the birds showing up at the feeders, and if a bigger bird shows up, it jumps in front, or if the birds outnumber the big bird up front, then that big bird goes away. And so you're getting the things that leave the feeder. That's what you're collecting. I have played this game only once so far with 2 players, and I don't think that 2 players is the best experience just with the drafting, because it's sort of dry majorities competition. It's either me or you. And in this case, it felt like there needed to be some other person, which is funny because I just played Atlandice recently. I did a video on that, where that's a majorities game, and I felt the 2-player game was much better than the 3-player game because of the majorities were head-to-head. So I don't quite know what to make of that disparity, but again, I've only played it once, and it's hard to talk about more. It's hard to say more than that. It's very clever the way you're trying to maneuver things around and get stuff, but I can't say more. So what else do I have in the played minimally pile and have not done a video on yet? Winston from Helvetiq. You are trying to make long dogs. Each player has a hand of 5 cards. You must play 2 cards on a turn. The deck only consists of heads and tails, and there are 6 colors of dogs with 3 heads and 8 tails in the box. You must play at least 2 cards on a turn. And so if a dog has 2 tails, it's not really 2 tails, it's sort of 2 bodies overlapping, so it makes this longer body with a tail at the end, and you add to that. If it has at least 2 body cards, then you have to take it. And you want long dogs so you can get the awesome bone of victory, which gives you extra points in addition to the points for the dog itself. And you get short dogs, you get the little poop token, because games need poop tokens. All right. So trying to do that, very simple, straightforward game. You're forced to play. You may not want to play, but you do it, and you see how things work out. So again, played once with 2 people. There you go. Dice fishing, which was on my Gen Con 2018 summary video, because I'd only played it 2 or 3 times. I've still only played 2 or 3 times. You have target cards with fish, where you need to get certain combinations on your dice. Every player chooses simultaneously how many dice they're going to roll, and whoever reveals the fewest dice rolls first. But of course, they have the worst odds for actually succeeding. So there you go, a little challenge. How risky do you want to be as you're trying to get things? Top Spin, a game by Helvetiq that I've played a couple of times by Martin Nedergaard Anderson. It's extremely similar, where you have a top and you have balls in this concave shape inside the box. And you spin the top and you're trying to knock the balls into holes around the box to score 1 to 12 points. In one game, you're just trying to be the first to cover all holes 1 to 12, so you mark them off on a sheet. And another one, you're trying to score more points than the person did previously. And you have very little control, as in next to none, as you spin the top and it just goes around in the box. And hopefully it spins for a long, long time. And you knock lots of things around. Realm of Sand by Emperor S4, which I played in prototype form. It's the short description of the game is patchwork meets splendor. And you have I'm trying not to knock over my stack here. You have a circle of pieces. You're going to be moving around that circle of pieces and drafting those polyomino shapes and putting them into a grid in order to make patterns with particular colors to complete cards, which get you points. And the cards are the 3 rows of splendor style, where you're drafting those off. And of course, the complicated ones up top need special colors, which you're going to have to work for and get in particular ways. So it's I love the puzzle aspect of it. It's super involved, and it just hasn't made it to the table in the time available, as is the case with so many games. I am so sorry. All I can do is, this is like the publishers I have to avoid eye contact with. Oh, we'll get to those. We're not there yet. So, Mystical Seeds from 2+ Games. Played this twice with 2 and 3 people. You have this object here, which is filled with seeds, and on a turn, you are going to draft one of these fairies. You tip it over to show which one you're going to take. You take 1 to 3 primary colored seeds from next to that fairy, and then you take the action of that fairy. So do you want the color? Do you want the fairy? Hopefully you want both. You are going to use the fairies to duplicate colors, or you're going to upgrade from a primary to a secondary color, or you are going to graft, where you combine level 1 and level 2 to make something else. Okay, or 2 level 1s become a level 2, or level 1 and level 2 become brown, which is the level 3, which is the joker in the middle there. And you're going to lay out, doesn't have that here, you're going to lay out your seeds in a circle, and you've got some geographic restrictions on what you can duplicate. It has to be along the lines of your heptagonal heptagram. Has to be along the lines there, and what you're grafting, the seeds have to match in the line. So it's got all these interesting placement restrictions where you're trying to collect seeds in order to get plants, which are worth points. And as you score the plants, whatever seeds you use, move your fairies up on the chart, which is going to give you special bonus actions and points as well. And it's a race to 10 points. That was a long description there. I was trying to be brief on all these, and here I go, getting longer. Micropolis by Bruno Cathala and Charles Chevalier. Played this a half dozen times. I got a copy at the Con Fair in February, and I still have not done a video, even though I've played it a bunch. So sad. So sad. So 2 to 6 players, you're each building an anthill. You're drafting tiles, or small rolled style. So there's a row of tiles, and you take the first one for free, or you put an ant on it to skip it and take the next one, and so on and so on. And you're trying to get lots of ants in your anthill. You're trying to get a queen that's isolated from other queens. You're trying to collect pieces of fruit, because you're ants and you love fruit. So you're trying to manage everything, and the ants are your money. Yes, you're spending your own ants in order to get tiles. It seems a little cruel, but whatever. You do it anyway. Ecolinks from Korea Boardgames. This is a speed tile placement game in which each player has their own grid, and you have possible paths numbered 1 to 18 around the circumference of your area. And every player has a big set of tiles that's way more than you need to actually fill that space. And what happens is you're going to turn up 6 number tiles, and they'll be numbered 1 to 18 to match the spaces here. You put your 6 tokens around the grid, and then you're racing to fill that grid with the path tiles so that you have a path that connects all 6 of those, but with no other paths going out. So, pattern building racing game. Whoever does this first gets the largest numbered gold tile, and the gold tiles go 10 to 18. And then the second player gets the lowest gold tile if there's only gold, or the highest silver tile, which is 1 to 9. And then those tiles are removed. And so you're taking 6 tiles, and then put those aside, and draw another 6, and draw another 6, and now you've used all 18, then you shuffle what's left, and then you go again. And so you're getting points based on where you finish, and when you run out of tiles, eventually there's not 6 anymore, then the game ends. So it's a very interesting system. That, of course, may just devolve down to who solves puzzles the fastest. It's kind of a problem always with the pattern recognition or pattern building games, is sometimes it's just one player's 5% faster, and then they will always, that 5% is all they need to win. I've played once, so I don't know. I can't talk more about experience there. So sorry. So, Cerberus. Game by La Boîte de Jeux. It's 3 to 7 players. I only played once with 3, where you are sort of cooperatively trying to escape this dog from hell, as one would when faced with this. Who wants to get eaten up by Fluffy? So you are running along the path based on the cards that you play, but each card you play has a cost, and that cost is usually advancing Cerberus's dice along the path, or you may increase it, which increases the speed at which it will run when that die reaches the end of the path. When it runs along the path, if it catches anyone, then those players are turned to Cerberus's side. Instead of using the 4 action cards for the hero, they turn their cards over and use the 4 actions on the other side, which are actually doubled, so you got 8 actions available to you. And there's lots of choices, and most of it just seems like, it's hell on one side and damnation on the other. It seems like bad choices all around, and you can take actions that will help other players more than you, and you hope that they will do that do that same thing back to you so that you will both advance faster than everyone else. May or may not happen, right? Depending on how other players feel. And it has that sort of characteristic French wildness that a lot of people think of when you think of French games, because so many things happen and you have to sort of just roll with it and see what's going to happen. Again, I played once with 3 players, so it's hard to make final judgments on that, but here I am talking about it anyway. What else? Bruno Faidudi's Dragons from Meadow. This is a set collection game in which you're going to have piles equal to the number of players, and you're going to draw a card and you add it to one of the piles, or you take a pile and you're out. Okay, so sort of Colorado style, except you got all those piles available to you and they build up until a certain percentage of the deck is gone, a third or a quarter, depending on the player count. And then you reveal what you have, and you're trying to score for complete suits of armor to show how many warriors you've taken down as the awesome dragon that you are. Or you're trying to collect sets of gems, or you're trying to collect food, because if you don't have food at the end of the game, if you have the least amount of food, then you automatically lose. And then beyond that, if anyone's still alive, the other dragons who are still alive, they count their points, not you. You start to death. And I've played this game 3 or 4 times now with different groups, and all the groups have just gone, I don't know. I don't know. I wanted to like it more as well. But it's mostly a memory game for what you're going to take when, and it didn't have a spark. Mostly because you're looking at one person look at a card and then put it in a pile. And that was it. And your turn comes around and then you do the same. It's hard to judge. There's no like rise to the game, right? You want some arc to the game where it's got levels of tension for what you're going to get and what you're building towards. And it felt very monotone across there. And so again, I've not done a video, even though I've played 3 or 4 times. I forget how many it is now. Just because I kept feeling like, am I missing something? What's here? I want to try it again. And then it never gets back to the table. And so now I talk about it here. So there we go. Word Slam Family, which is like Word Slam, if you know the Inca Marcus brand game that came out in 2016, I believe. But it is compact. You can play it on its own, or you can use the cards with the other Word Slam game. It's slightly different in that the words are organized by categories. So you're going to have some sort of clue as to what the word you're trying to guess is related to. Whereas in the original game, you only had super easy, medium, hard, super hard. That was it. It was only the difficulty of guessing, and now you have categories to give you a clue and help you out. So I've played it 3 times. I love it as much as the other one, and there we go. I will move on to the next game. Again, did not do a video. I've talked about it here. The Bark Side, which I got a rough copy of at Con in 2018 when ahead of Korea Board Games going on Kickstarter. Kickstarter did not work, but they're going to have copies for sale at Spiel anyway. And it's not a trick-taking game. It's a game where you've got cards 1 to 10, and you are trying to discard cards to go out and not be the last player who has cards, because then you're going to collect... sorry, I'm mixing things up here. No edits. You're trying to play things down and trying not to take the last trick. However, if you can't beat... All right, it's a once-around trick game, and if you can't beat what is currently winning in the trick, then you have to discard your lowest cards. And you can play groups, you can play a single, you can play a pair, you can play 3 of a kind. And so if I play 3 8s and you can't beat 3 8s, you got to play your 3 lowest cards. So naturally you'll be more likely to win the final trick if I'm dumping all the low cards out of your hand. But of course, if I don't play 3 8s, then I'm going to get stuck. So you gotta win and then figure out how to lose. And got some up and down there to keep track of everything. And I played that 3 or 4 times. It's gone over really well. Now it'll actually come out anyway. So that's good. We have Tauntaun, which, like the Bark Side, so this is Korea Board Games. This is Happy Baobab, so 2 Korean publishers. This was originally released in Japan. Now in a new edition, this also released in Japan. This was originally a 3-player only game called Ninja Trick, I believe. And Tauntaun is now expanded 3 to 5 players. And what you're trying to do, somewhat similar, just in what's important in the game, is you have a scoring threshold, and you don't want to go above that, or you don't want to go below that. And there's also a color threshold as well that still relates to numbers. Don't worry about it. You get a point threshold. And when you win a trick, you take all the cards from that trick, you organize them by color with the lowest number on top, and then you put them on any other cards that you've won. And the points are whatever the top cards are. So if you have a threshold of 10, you do not want to collect cards where the sum of all those cards is higher than 10. So you want to win tricks in order to get points, because whoever is closest to that threshold without going over gets the most points at the end of the round. And whoever doesn't, if you have lower ones, you get lesser score. If you go over the threshold, you get nothing except for each of the 6s you collect, which is worth 1 point. And I've played it only twice so far with 3 players, and it was like a 10-15 minute game. It was super fast, and it was only 3 rounds, and it seems like it should be longer just to add up to more, because one of the games I won the first 2 rounds, and then there was no way someone could beat me in the 3rd round, so it was kind of pointless. It seemed like there needed to be more. And we played again, and there was more variety there. So that was a hard one to work with, just because, again, I've only played twice. So here we go. I love the trickiness to it, that aspect, different hook, because every trick-taking game needs its hook. And so here it is, where you're collecting things and scoring, but not too much. And so if you can hold cards to the right time, then you can stick someone else. But of course, if you save a really high number to try to stick someone else, you might just win the trick instead, and you just hoisted yourself. So Animale Tactica. This is by Susumu Kawasaki. It's going to be out from Japan brand. It says 2 to 4 players, but it's really a 4-player, 2 player only game. You can play with 3 or 4, but you want to. I've played twice, both with 2 players. Inside the rules, Susumu Kawasaki says, inspired by the Great Dazzleedu. And you can very much see that, because there are 4 decks of cards that are all animals, and each player takes one of those decks. And the cards generally range from 2 to 12 with a king, or possibly 2 kings, in that group. And you're playing either a single card or an army of the same number. And then the next player has to play a higher single card or a higher army. But the trick with the armies as well is, whatever the sum of that army is, they can beat that if they can play a larger group with lower numbers. So if I put out 2 3s, that sums to 6. So they can beat it with 2 4s or 2 6s or 2 8s or 2 12s, or with 3 2s, because that also adds to 6. But there's more cards, so you can think of it as surrounding my army. So now if they have 3 2s, then I have to beat it with a 3 of a kind. So if I beat it with 3 4s, that's 12. So I can either put out 3 6s or 3 8s, or the other player can, or someone could beat it with 4 3s. So you got this little escalation here until someone passes. And when you pass, you draw 2 more cards from your deck. You start with only 10 cards out of the 16 cards in your deck, and you try to be the first player to run out of cards in your hand. So if you never have to draw from your deck again, then you're going to win the round. If you have to draw from your deck, you're going to possibly strengthen your hand, because now you've got more stuff and can hopefully play over the opponent, but now you have more cards to get rid of as well. So it's an interesting way to play, just because Great Dazzleedu style, there's strength in lots of low numbers. So if you have tons of 2s, then you can possibly put together a lot of cards at once and go towards emptying your hand faster. But you need the opportunity to play them. So whoever wins the round, their deck is retired. Their opponent chooses one of the remaining decks, and then the winner chooses one, and then you go again and you play a best of 3. So all 4 decks will be used if you play 3 games, and you have a variety of experiences there. Very cool little 2-player battle game that, again, I've played twice, and here we are, the day before I head to Germany. So Cat Rescue from Tatewoo, published by Sunrise Tornado Game Studio, which is Tatewoo's studio. It's a 1 to 4 player game where you're trying to rescue cooperatively cats and get them adopted. So it's got a very cool puzzle thing. And this is one where it's just like, I've played it 4 times now recently. solitaire as well with other people, and it'd be great to do a video and show it on the table because you really want to see things moving around, and yet no time. So you start with an invisible 4x4 grid. You lay out 4 cats in the middle of that, and one of those cats is going to have a card on there showing essentially it just arrived into the shelter coming through this doorway. It's very important, this doorway. Now, each player in turn, you start with 2 cards in your foster care, and you can play a card from your foster care, or you can play a card from the deck, which is the deck of strays. Unless someone else played from their foster care previously, you must take in a stray. You're trying to save those strays. So you take a cat, and you put it in the grid by placing it next to a cat that's already in the grid, and then you push. So I guess the cat's coming in the door, and then you got to make room for it, push it out of the way. You cannot move the cat that just arrived because it's very nervous. You gotta leave it calm, let it sit here for a while, and you can't push in the same direction that it was moved because it gets jealous and will attack you. I don't know. You can make up whatever justifications you want for this. So whatever cat came in, if I put it here and then pushed, well, now the arrow will flip and it'll go this way. Don't touch that cat. Don't move in that direction. What you're trying to do is make lines of cats, 3 or 4 of the same color. And when you do that, you flip over the middle cards, and now they're ready for adoption. If you push a cat that's not ready for adoption out of the grid, it goes to your foster home. If you push a cat that's ready for adoption, that's flipped face down out of the grid, then you will score 2 points for it at the end of the game. The game ends if someone ever has 3 cats in their foster home because you're doing a terrible job getting them ready for adoption, or when the deck of strays runs out. You score 2 points for each cat that's been adopted. You score 1 point for each cat that was ready for adoption. And there you go. And there's multiple expansions where you add a 5th color, you add individual scoring conditions and other sorts of things. But it's a cute little puzzle game with adorable looking cats. You just look at the box here. Right? It's got adorable cats. That'll sell it. But it's a cute family game too that I've played with 2 9-year-olds. And they had a ball trying to move things around, trying to figure stuff out. There you go. Again, no time. Walking in Burano from Emperor S4. This is a game in which you are building buildings. It's a 1 to 4 player game. It is competitive, except of course for the 1 player game, which you are competing against yourself. You are building buildings in a 5x3 grid. So you're going to have 5 buildings that have a ground floor, a middle floor, and a roof. And you, on a turn, are going to draft from a similar layout. It's where you've got a row of roofs, a row of middles, a row of ground floors, based on the number of players in the game. And you are either going to draft 1, 2, or 3 cards. And when you do that, if you draft 3 cards, you get no money. If you draft 2 cards, you get 1 money. If you draft 1 card, you get 2 money. And then you can play cards into your 5x3 grid. And you want all those buildings to be the same color, or else you have to discard a permit token, which means it's going to cost you points at the end of the game. It also costs you money each time you build. You have a limit of 3 cards in hand. You have a limit of 6 money, so you can't just collect everything at once. You have to have this ebb and flow of drafting, getting money, and then building. It's the in and out. You have to commit. This is going to be a green building. If you want to put a green building next to it, that also violates permits. You need a variety of colors. Make it look nice, look colorful, all right? So you're trying to build everything up, draft the right stuff, but you're at the mercy of what comes up, and you're at the mercy of what other people do because they will take what you want, if they can, and then build stuff. And when you complete a house, you draft either a tourist or an inhabitant, and you put that underneath your building. And the tourist only cares about whatever that is in that building. Does it have lots of cats? Does it have lots of flowers? What does it have? I want to be so excited. Or an inhabitant which cares about the whole block, or at least some portion of the block. So it's super disappointing that I only played this once and I'm only talking about it right now, because it's very cool. Just that fun drafting, money management, hand management experience where you're taking risk and trying to put things down. The turn order, start player rotates each round, so of course you're trying to time everything right so that I can get what I need. I know I'm desperately needing blue, but I'm first next time, so hopefully this comes up. You have all the situations that you want in a game. It is a wonderful experience. And now we move on to the next game. Trap Words from Czech Games Edition. This is the next party game from them, not by Vladislav. I played twice in Prototype. I played once in this more advanced Prototype. It is not final yet, as you can see. And you can think of it sort of as customized taboo. So you have tiles laid out, numbered 3 to 7, and each player has a word, each team has a word they're trying to get. Each team has a word that the clue giver on their team is trying to get their teammates to guess. However, before they do that, the other team gets to see that word and they get to write down a number of trap words equal to whatever space you're on. So initially, they're writing down 3 trap words. So these are the 3 common words that they think you might say to get your teammates to guess this. And as you advance on the path, they're going to write more and more trap words. And there's some monsters that come up and some things that change the rules for how you give clues or what affects things. And you get to the end and there's a monster at the end. And you're trying to defeat the monster by guessing words properly. So it's personalized taboo in that you get to write down the words that the other team can't say. And it's kind of interesting because if you play with people you know, then you have a better idea of what they want to say and how they would explain things. You can't say words like the, so you can't give something like that. It has to be related to the word that they're going to guess. And it's a fun twist on a familiar party game. So I'll say that if you love Taboo, you got this, which is like that, but more interesting, I guess I'd say, because it's not dated. Right? Taboo gives you the words. Here's what you can't say. And at some point you don't care about that anymore, or you're trying to guess things that aren't relevant. And now you get to make your own restrictions. So there you go. Layers. This is a simultaneous building game, pattern building game, like I mentioned before, with eco links, where you have, each player has a set of layered tiles, and you're given a pattern card, and you try to recreate that by laying your layers on top of each other. All right, do that first. So again, a lot of it is like that pattern recognition, that you can look at something and dissect it and figure out what you want to make. And some of them use only 3 of your layers, and some 4, and some 5. So it's levels of difficulty for what you want to do. So again, played once. Here we are. Moving on. Almost through here with the things I've played once or twice. Take. This one's actually a special exception to what I'm doing, because this game came out at Spiel 2017, and I've played it 5 times, and I keep meaning to do a video, and then I don't do a video. Designed by Ravensburger. It's a fascinating 2-player game in which you are drafting tiles from a central row. You have tiles in 5 colors, and they're stacked up there's 7 of each, and there's 5 towers. And on a turn, you draft a tile from the top of the tower, and then you cover it with a ghost token, so no one can take from that tile until the other tiles have also been taken from, and then the ghost tokens are removed, and then you do more. And you're trying to, when you reveal something, when you take a tile, the thing that you reveal scores, and you multiply however many things of those are on top. So if you reveal a daimyo, then the daimyos score. Oh, there's 2 daimyos on top, and how many points am I getting from daimyos? But also, how many points is the other guy getting from daimyos? Because everyone scores each round for the things that come up. So it's this little incremental game where I just want to edge you out a little bit over and over again. And 4 of the types of people that you are drafting have special powers. So they get to move ghost tokens around, or remove them, or add them so that you can adjust things. Or you can move pieces from the top, or the ninja can use one of your opponent's tokens. And when you use a power of something that has a power, it lessens the amount of points you get from that. So I spend your points to use a power from you. It's a fascinating 2-player game that I played twice and then didn't touch for 3 months. And then I played it again, and then I didn't touch for 3 months. And now I played it again. It's the same thing where you want to get to a level of familiarity, or at least I do, where I can talk about something with more depth and understanding. So I can deliver something that hopefully is useful to you. But moving on. That's what I have here. Dare to Love, published by Meadow. Games from Taiwan. And this game's fascinating. And again, I wish I could have talked about this more. I've played once so far. It's a 3 or 4 player game. And it's labeled on the... it's not labeled on the front. Labeled on the back. LGBTQ friendly. So, what's up with this game? It's got a special circumstance. It's a tactical movement game where one player is going to play an oligarch that's going to be represented by one of 3 characters, and each character has their own unique deck, so they'll have special powers based on what character they are. You are going to take, if you're against the oligarch, you're a rebel, and there's 6 different rebels, and they all have their own decks with their own unique powers. So you've got all this unique ability coming around where you're going to play cards simultaneously and move around a map, and you're trying to destroy the oligarch and, as part of the rebel team, rescue prisoners. And there's going to be 2 or 3 prisoners based on the player count. And you have to rescue the prisoners and destroy the oligarch in order to win the game. The oligarch has to defeat the rebels or live 13 rounds, I believe. Our oligarch destroyed us in, I think, 5 rounds, 6 rounds. It was very short. Extremely powerful attacks. We hadn't looked through the cards ahead of time, so we didn't really know what was coming, but the oligarch just like blasted us apart completely. And it seemed very hopeless to do this. Now, what was super interesting about this game, and again, why I wish I could have played more and talked about it in more detail, is the setting, which doesn't come across when you just play the game. I did not tell the setting to the other players, but talked about it with them afterwards. Curious about their reaction, whether they got anything from it. Mostly they looked at it. It's gorgeous artwork. It's so beautiful. Everything is super colorful and elaborate. There's rainbows all over. And there's a reason for that, along with the LGBTQ friendly mark on the back, is that the setting of the game is it's in the kingdom of Asimov, where homosexuality is outlawed, and the people who have been captured are your lovers, your friends, your family members, who are sentenced to death. And you are going to rescue them. And the oligarch, of course, does not want that to happen. Which, when I initially read the description, really weirded me out, because I'm a super strong advocate for gay rights and transgender rights and all sorts of expressive freedom in here, because I don't understand why anyone would have issues with it for any reason whatsoever. All right, it all goes back to founding principles, and I'm going to dive in politics for a minute, and possibly you will scan ahead if I get some time markers on here if you don't want to hear any of this. It's astounding that anyone would care. I go back to a Peter McWilliams book that's hugely influential to me called Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do. And it's all about the things that we should have penalties for, and the things that should be outlawed are crimes that relate to harming other individuals or damaging property that other people own. And if you don't do any of that, then what does it matter what other people do? And this relates to all sorts of things. Drug laws primarily, but also any sort of gender relations or sexual interaction with other people. There's all sorts of things that go on. And anyway, tied up into the game, you, if you were the oligarch, have to defeat the rebels so that these prisoners can be executed. And I initially read the description, I was just like, I don't know if I want to play this game. I don't know if I want to do this. I mean, it struck me a lot more than something like Memoir 44, where yes, you're playing the Germans or you're playing the Americans or the Brits or France or whoever, where it feels more in the past. It's not a present day situation, but it's very current. And it struck me as just like, I felt extremely uncomfortable about this. Although, of course, the other side are the rebels who are trying to free the people, free their lovers, free their family. And the cards detail who the people are that have been captured. I was the prince. The prince's lover was captured. I want to get the prince's lover back with me. Freedom. Freedom. It's important. The ability to do what you want to do that does not harm other people. I mean, thankfully, one of the players, when I gave just the description where it's one versus many, the other guy was like, yeah, I want to be the bad guy, which was fine because we had just played a game where he had turned traitor against us in the middle of the game. So he was gung-ho for that without knowing the setting of the game. And we talked about it afterward. And Asimov, of course, this fictional kingdom is Formosa backwards, with Formosa being the former name for Taiwan, although Taiwan actually has fairly liberal gay and lesbian rights, at least that I've looked up. They do not have homosexual marriage yet. There's some sort of court ruling where it's going to go into effect in 2019 unless it, the legislature passes something first, it will automatically happen. I'm getting way off topic. You are going to forward. You probably forwarded way past here. So it's this weird situation where people say that games should not have political agendas, and that is bullshit. That is complete garbage that anyone would say that, because games have political agendas all the time. It's just maybe not a political agenda you care about or you think is controversial, and so you just wash over it. But it's perfectly fine for a game to cover any subject matter at all. Any subject matter. It may not be of interest to you, but it's of interest to someone. So, yeah. Right? I generally don't care for space games, so I don't play space games. But I don't object to the existence of space games. Go have fun in space, right? Hopefully there's awesome things related to the colonization and travel through space that interest you, if that's what you like. This is fascinating just because it's taking on this relevant modern topic in this fictional land that's related to something where I don't know the history of Taiwan and I don't know the situation over there. And so again, it's confronting me with a situation that I don't know about. And that ties into the gameplay and it ties in the setting. It makes me want to know more about it. Just like I want to know more about the world. I want to know about situations of things happening. So that was a long detour. Possibly going to be half the video on its own. So it's an interesting tactical movement game that possibly we played completely wrong when we got destroyed by the oligarch. And we have to play again. And maybe then I do a proper video on it in the future where I possibly put some more context to what's going on here. Moving on. Kua. There's another Japon brand release. The publisher is Kuon. Kuon is the game. Kua is the publisher. And it's sort of Othello-ish. It's a two-player game where you're going to put down stones, and if you surround stones, you flip them to your color. But in addition, there's ways to capture stones. And if they have force plays for the other player based on what you do. And so ideally, if you can put the opponent in a situation where they can't play, or you can make a row of 5 stones, if I'm remembering this correctly, then you win the game. So it has a little more meat to it than what we said before. There's more. Oh my god, there's more. There's so much more. Mandoo, published by Mandoo Games, and I'll do a disclaimer here in that I was paid to edit the English rules for this game as well as for Spring Rally from Mandoo. I did not mention that before when I talked about papering Duel, but I was not paid to edit those rules, but it's the same publisher. So Mandoo, I played twice. It's a 2 to 4 player game in which you are placing bears on a grid, but you cannot place bears of adjacent colors next to one another. And you have to pay when you're placing a bear with the colors that's around it. And when you place on a location, you are getting symbols that are on the paths, and you're trying to collect certain symbols. You collect enough of one type and you get a bonus card, and it's going to let you break the rules in some manner. So you're drawing bears out of a bag, which you are then going to be used to place bears on the board and try to occupy spaces. And ideally, you can grab the spots that cost the least to get the things, to get you the bonus cards, and and you continue all there. So, again, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a video or not, just because I was paid to do the rules. I feel this a little awkward, but the publisher sent it to me anyway. Now we're getting to the other, the whole pile of shame here, the shelves of shame of things that I have received but have not even played, such as Spring Rally, which is, again, I was paid to edit this. It's a trick-taking racing game in which essentially you're trying to wind your spring, and so when you win the trick and your spring triggers, you move ahead lots of spaces at once. So, Seals, which is a set collection game where you're trying to get certain combinations of cards in your hand in order to collect seals, and the better the combination, the more seals you're going to get. Oh boy, this is getting into things where I know some of things. So the Lost Expedition is a cooperative game from Pierre Sylvester, which I played a couple of times, but as you see from the shiny wrap here, I have not even opened the Fountain of Youth and Other Adventures, which is an expansion for it, which adds different scenarios to the Lost Expedition. And there you go. That is what I have. Crime Hotel. It's a new edition from Happy Baobab of Susumu Kawasaki trick-taking game, in which you're trying to deduce the identity of a card in a particular grid. And you are going to place bets on what number that you think the card is, what color it is, at least in the original Japanese edition. And you're going to play tricks, which is going to let you place bids. So, and you're trying to score points based on how close you are. So the more specific you are about your bet, the more you can win. But of course, the more likely you are to be wrong. Okay. What else? Happy Baobab has a new edition of Roberto Fraga's Crazy Eggs, which was originally the Dancing Eggs, published by Haba. So again, you're going to roll a die. You're then going to do crazy things with these eggs. Tucking them in, holding them around, moving them all over the place. There's so many games. So many games. Should I talk about more? I got some more here. DV Jockey has a 2 to 4 player card game Catalyst, which has like special powered cards, which looked really cool when we filmed an overview at Spielwiese. And then I borrowed it from the BGG library and have not played it yet. Poetry Slam from Mayday Games. Look at this. You can see my game wall reflected in this box. You're going to make up poems and you try to win snaps from people. That's what you want to do, right? Wonderland 13. So game by Play With Us Designs with the Alice in Wonderland theme. It's got very cute keys. That is what I know. Again, unnamed farm organisms. That is right here. Where it's a memory game where you are going to make up names for the animals, and you are aliens coming down to study them, and you name the animals, and then you try to memorize them and make sure that you keep on top of that. Okay. Pirate Rumble from Mizu Games, 3 to 8 player game, which has pirates from history which you represent, and you're going to have your own crew. Interesting with the 3 to 8 players. I suddenly received a lot of games. Like Cerberus also was 3 to 7 players. There were a couple others as well. There were 3 to 7, 3 to 8. It's a big range that you don't normally see, and yet here we are. All these games could be in 2 to 4 players, and this one was not. Strange Vending Machine by Soso Studio, which I have not been opening most of these games, but I have to open this one to show you because it's kind of an incredible design where you have little vending machines that are going to have cards stuck inside them, and you get to see what's for sale in the front of the box, and then you're going to pull that out, and of course then there'll be something new inside. And how do you pay? You have coins that you're going to insert in the slot, and sometimes during the game you're going to try to steal from the machines, and so you have to pay attention to what people are buying from so you know which one has the most coins in it. You can't just like pick them up and jingle. You gotta pick them up and then try to rifle through them and get coins out of it. And there's 2 different games in here, and this showed up later than I was able to get it to the table. So sorry. Family Trade, one of the Japon brand releases that comes in a foam package. And aside from that, that is all I know right now. It's very interesting. I've not heard from the publisher before. Don't know anything about the game. It's just, I'm so sad. So sad. Story of Kazuna and Luciola Cruciata, another Japan brand release, which again, you see I've not even taken off the shrink wrap. I'm so sorry. 3 to 6 players. Mini World War II from a Taiwanese publisher, Formosa Force Games, which has an extremely abstract take on World War II, where it's got this square grid of countries which represents the world. You start looking down from the North Pole, and you're going to have 2 sides with 2 to 4 players. You split up however, based on certain conditions where you have the Axis and the Allies. And you are trying to go at one another with cards in your card play. You are going to be making ships and tanks. Oh my God. I read the rules. That is all I got so far. And then I blanked out on it. Fortune City from Big Fun, where you're building up a city. There you go. That's all I know. Oh my God, it's so cute. And then I didn't actually get it to the table. This is one of the games where it showed up right before Gen Con. I was like, I don't get to preview it before it debuts. There's going to be a few copies available at Gen Con. And then it comes to Spiel, and then like I hit the pedal for Spiel, and then I never get to it at all, even though I should have, and I had it already. Sorry. So sorry. Stevenson's Rocket, the new edition from Grail Games. I'm not sure whether Grail's going to be at Spiel or not, but this just arrived in the mail, so I thought I'd highlight it anyway. New edition of the classic Reiner Knizia game, investment game where you're building up railroads. Luck-free, totally new edition. I love the look of Grail's designs when they keep doing new editions, and they got a long relationship with Knizia, and it's very cool to keep seeing these because, of course, Circus Flicati, very cool. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I'm blanking on the other one here. Medici. Oh, I look on my shelf and see Medici. Medici has a great look to it, and I'm happy to see these and want to see more come from them. So Taiwan, a huge game from Good Game Studios, and a Chinese-speaking person showed up at my house, was interested in it, and we looked at it for a bit, and there was only Chinese text on the cards. And at that point, I covered the box, and then I had not revisited it to find out whether there was English translation online. So sorry. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Gemstone Mining, a new version of Quartz coming out from USAopoly, partnered with Passport. This is another 3 to 7 player game. It's a press your luck game. You're trying to get gems to fill your cart in order to get pie points from Snow White. It seems weird. Snow White is just relegated to handing out pie points to people, right? All the men take action, and Snow White's in the kitchen making pies. It seemed like that should not be the case, and yet, that's just... Okay, we move on. Forgotten City from 2+ Games, which, man, this is such a gorgeous cover. But you know what? I have played Mystical Seeds. I have not yet played Forgotten City. So, I just put that down and move on. Helvetiq has other Knizia titles that are new additions. Look at this box size for Cartel. It's kind of interesting. It is as long as a person's forearm. There you are. You can put these on your shield, wrap these around your forearms, and then do karate and do safe blocks. Block with a box. And again, I wish I could say more about these games, but I haven't played them yet. Dealmaker is a game from Helvetiq that is debuting, and it's a real-time trading game in which you're trying to collect things. So you're trading hectically with various people at different times, and more stuff gets introduced into the game as the game progresses. What else do we have here? Showing up at the last minute, there's 4 games for preschoolers from Play Around, which is a Taiwanese producer that has English description on the back, but when this was originally packaged, it had only a Chinese description on the back, and there are no English rules inside. And I have not gone online yet to see whether there's English rules, and I'm not going to be able to since I need to go to bed soon. So sorry. Nematon, published by Blam Edition. This is a druid moving game in the forest, and man, I wish I knew more about this. We filmed an overview at Con, and I have forgotten everything I learned at that time. This is sort of the problem here, where there's too many games in too little time, and you absorb as much as you can, and then you just move on. And so now we're ending. We've got one more. My biggest regret, a game that arrived last week, unexpectedly. Discover Lands Unknown by Corey Kineska, published by Fantasy Flight Games. This is the second game in their unique game series following Keyforge by Richard Garfield, where the components are unique. You get a unique combination of components. And in this game, you are trying to explore the land. You are an adventurer. You're not exactly sure where you are, which is kind of a weird situation. Like, I don't know if you were picked up by a UFO, or what exactly happened, that you don't know where you are or what you're doing or, who you're with. You're going to discover your character. Let's open this up here. I'm trying to clear some space so that I can actually show you what's inside the box. If nothing else, I can show you what's inside the box. But that, of course, means I have to move aside things and make room for this, because otherwise you're going to see all sorts of other stuff on the table, because I've just been making a mess. All right. Look at all these games stacked up. Isn't that ridiculous? Okay, Discover, Lands Unknown. I opened it and I read most of the rules, and then I have just run out of time to actually play anything. We have the standard Fantasy Flight Games catalog from last year, which I don't know why they always give you last year's catalog. You think they'd have a more recent one, but they don't. You have a rule book, okay, which is on top. You have terrain reference sheets, which are particular to the terrain in your box. So I have desert terrain and snowy mountain terrain, which relate to the scenarios in the game. Okay, so the particular terrain will differ depending on what you get in your box. Here is this sheet of components where you got player dials. We're going to track various things on here. It's going to track your health and how dehydrated you are and how hungry you are. You got other tokens, and these are common to all copies of the game as far as I can tell. Then you go underneath, and now you get the stuff that is unique to you. So we've got some snowy terrain here, which I'm not going to show you what's on the other side because you don't need to know, right? Keep it a mystery. Maybe you'll have snowy terrain as well. Maybe you will have snowy terrain sheet 624A, 6.24A. That is what my sheet says here. You'll have a unique assortment of things down here at the bottom. You have animals and other sort of encounters, and those are all random. And again, I'm not going to show you what's on the back here, but I have 3 of those sheets. You notice a QR code on all of these sheets. Okay, so presumably you can scan everything. This is a little sticker that's on the sheet. It's not on part of the board itself. Here is my desert terrain. Got other sorts of things. And then we have a whole bunch of decks of cards, which again have QR codes on each of them. So presumably you can parse all this out with your QR code reader and then discover, he's got the Helen Foster pack, or at least Helen Foster is one of the cards inside this pack. We don't know about the others yet. Oh man, so many regrets. No time to play. People are going to be playing at Spiel. Discover all the games that Eric has played, and that Eric has played less than enough times to do a video, and possibly not at all. So there we go. That is what we were discovering. Here we have a long video. Maybe I'll see you at Spiel. I will be at Spiel. I arrive Tuesday. I'll be there. We'll start filming on Wednesday. We film all the way through Sunday. We film more than 8 hours a day of interviews. And I'm going to be running around trying to look at games that are coming out in 2019. I try to preview as much as I can at that show so that I will start to be prepared for the next one. Not enough preparation time. There's never enough time to do all this. I have so many regrets. So many publishers that I can barely look in the eye. Because I'm just not ready. I'm not ready. But the show is coming whether you're ready or not. Maybe I will see you there. If so, come say hi. Come say hi at the booth. We got lots of people at the booth who are going to be interviewing and producing, selling things from our store, just chatting with people. We got to greet people at the booth, make sure everyone's all organized, and get copies of the games that are being presented so that we can bring them back to BGG-Con in November. And if you're going to be at that show, we will have several hundred new games at that show from the Spiel convention. Time to go to bed. Oh wait, time to pack. I had to pack for the trip. But I'll do that. You? Hopefully you can play something. Maybe you'll play something that I haven't played yet, and you can tell me all about it later. Or I'll play with you at a table at Spiel, or BGG-Con, or somewhere else in the future. If not, I'll be back with more videos for things that I have played and can talk about. So hope you can join me for those. Thanks.